Okay. Let's add our new content in here. All right. We are ready. Welcome back. We are COMP2112. That's Advanced Client-Side Scripting in the fall 2022 semester at Georgian. And we are week 8, part 3 of our broadcast and recording together. And we left off with our little recording. We just finished scaffolding out our app, and we ran our little React app. We said that, woohoo, right? We're running, but nothing's happening. It has nothing to do with us. This is just somebody else's work, right? And we want to make this our own. So the great thing about this is a couple things. One, we have no server to run. That means it's running it automatically. Number one. Two, it is synced up directly with our application. So if I actually look at my application here, you can see that it's actually running, right? And it's running locally on port 3000, and it's running on our network, whatever my network, my local network is. In our case, this is what it is. But I want to make some changes. And in order for us to do that, let's do a tour. Let's do a bit of a tour of my structure. What do I get when I go to create React app? What do I get from it? Okay, here's what I get. Again, I get a public folder, and I get a source folder, and I get a gitignore file, and I get a package.json. Let's take a look at this package.json thing. So package.json, here it is. It has the name of my project. We've seen a package.json like this before, right? We made our own package.json the last time, and we had 2 types of dependencies. We have dev dependencies, and we have project dependencies. Here, they've mixed dev dependencies and project dependencies together. Notice we have our @types. We have our @types, and we also have our regular application requirements right here. And notice that TypeScript is a project dependency now, okay? So we have that. We have our version number. We have that here. And we're missing some stuff. We don't have information about who we are. We don't have information about our application at all. None of that stuff that we get when we do a yarn init. That means it's probably a good idea to do another yarn init here and redo our little project structure for our package.json. On that though, please remove your package-lock.json. Let's get rid of this file first. So I'm gonna go here, right click, and I'm just going to delete, right? I want to delete that file. And if we're running React, the React app, it's okay. Sometimes it stops us, but I wanted to get rid of that lock file. The lock file, what it does is it's using npm. We want to use yarn, right? That's why we have to get rid of that lock file. Back to this. I want to make a brand new little terminal. And as we start, let's clear the screen. And we'll say yarn init. And it's going to say, okay, the name of your app is week 8. Well, let's make it more descriptive. COMP2112 in the fall 2022 semester, and it's week 8. This will be your ICE 5 equivalent, right? I'm going to press enter. My version number is 0.1, sure. My description is demo app for COMP2112 in the fall 2022 semester at Georgian College, right? We can be as descriptive here as we want. And it's a demo React app is what we're doing, right? And it says, what's my entry point, index.js? Sure, we'll just accept that. It's not true. And then it says, hey, this is my application. Take a look. It gives me my URL. That's what I want. I want that there. And it says my author, that's me. That's new information. And my license is an MIT license. And if I press private is true, and if I do that, it updated my package.json So now if you look at it, it includes all that new information. And this is important information because you cannot have put this up on, you can't put this up on Render or someplace else like that without this stuff. So I want to move all of this to the top. So notice the top has my name, my version, and all this stuff. I want to make a space here at the top of my package.json. And I'm going to grab all of this code right here. So cut it, that yarn just generated for me. And I'm just going to go up here and paste it in to make sure that there's no extra comma. And put a comma here at the bottom, just so that it fits in nicely. And save. All right, great. I've changed my package.json. That's the first thing I've done. And I have this happening here. Next, my readme.md. Let's take a look at that. So my readme.md is a little readme file that tells me what it's a React app and blah, blah, blah. And really what it does is it tells me how to learn about React and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And that's great, but I don't need all this information. So let's just get rid of it all. So I'm just going to do Control A. I'm going to get rid of it, right? And I want to press a little hashtag, which is like an H1 tag. And it's going to say COMP2112 as an example in the fall 2022 semester, and it's week 8. Remember the hashtags, what they if you put a space in between the hashtag and this thing, it acts like an H1 tag. Here's an example of the reader, right? And I can put a double hashtag and it'll act like an H2. So demo React app for COMP2112 in the fall 2022 semester. So you can see what it does. This is our little documentation. And that's my README file. My README file has changed. Okay. The right side is a preview of what the readme.md file will do. You can actually download a little extension to do this for you, right? So in the extensions, the extension manager here, I can actually go through and download a, kind of a markdown. If I type in markdown as an extension, then you can see that I can, there might be an extension here that allows me to do MD, like a .md file, right? So it allows you to see the preview here. I forget what it's called, but there is an extension that I have that I've installed that does this preview. Maybe it's called Markdown Preview or something like that. Markdown Preview. You can look at that. And this is what this is. Here it is. Look at, there's my extension. Auto open. Does that do it? Yep. Auto open Markdown Preview. And that's what my extension's called. All right, so it does this part. All right, so that's nice. That's very nice that we did that part. Let's go through the tour now. So if I go into the public folder, notice I have a favicon. My favicon looks like this. That's my favicon, right? I have my index.html. By the way, guys, this is the entry point to my application right here, my index.html. And if you notice, it gives me an index.html already. And if I scroll down, we can see that we have a title, which is React App. I don't want my title being React App. I want my title being COMP2112. So let's change it. COMP2112. Save. And when I do that, and if I go back to my site, you can see here at the top, it's instantly changed. In fact, if I do a side-by-side, right, with this part, then anything I do on the left side immediately affects the right side. Okay, just like we've seen in the past. Okay, my logo. This is the logo that's included. There's another one that's a bit bigger. So it supplies 2 logos for you to use. There's also something called a manifest.json file. And the manifest.json file talks about the logo and the start URL if you want to, and a bunch of other stuff we're going to get into later on in this course. Okay. We have a robots.txt file for web crawlers, which we use to defend against those and also to describe certain things in our code. We can do that. And really, that's our public folder. Our public folder doesn't have anything else, just this stuff. But one thing to note is this. If I go back to my index.html file, my index.html file here, I'm just going to pull this over a little bit, right? So you can see it. It has a div with an ID of root. My friends, this is where our app is going to live. Our new app. Remember, we're making a single page application, just like we did from scratch. You and I made a single page application from scratch, right? Well, this is going to do all the heavy lifting for us now. We have nothing to do like that. So inside of our div ID is equal to root, this place right here, that is where all of our code is going to be injected. That is where we're going to live. My entire application is going to be inside of there. Okay. So I'm just showing you that so you know where it's going. Okay, that's number one. Let's close these things down because we don't need them now, right? And I'm going to continue with our little tour. Let's go back to our application. So that's a public folder. The public folder is really like set up for us. Source, the SRC folder. I like to call it the source folder. You can see that there are several new files, right? The first file we should look at is an index.tsx. Index.tsx. And if I look at that, it actually is a TypeScript file. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. And I want you to absorb some of the things we talked about in our PowerPoint for a second. Okay, here we go. We have import statements. The import statements import the library that we're going to use. So we're going to use React. We're going to use React DOM. We're going to use our CSS, a custom CSS. We're going to use our app, a new app component right here. This is our app component. We're also going to have something else called Web Vitals. We can use this or not. It's up to us, right? And here inside of our const declaration, we have where we create our root. So it says, hey, the root of our application is actually something where we're going to say document.getElementById root. We're going to cast it as an HTML element, and that is going to be the root of our application. Yes.
I have an index.js file.
That means you did not install your React app with TypeScript as a template. Remember I said you need to go create React app, the name of your app, then -- template, and then TypeScript. If you did that, then you'll have what I have. Yeah, so the command as it was from where we were is this one, right? So if you look here and create React app, this is the command. Yes, there's no way, no, so let me take that back. There is no easy way to convert from one type of app to the other. If you've already installed JavaScript, remove it and start over, right? You need to use TypeScript from the very beginning. If you don't, you'll never run like I do, and your job will be a little bit harder. I want to make your job as easy as possible. That's why we introduced TypeScript this semester. Yes. Yarn start. That's a beautiful thing. It's like one command, yarn start. There's no light server, there's nothing. Just yarn start. Well, we can, but there's no need for it. It's just a convention. That's what they use as a convention. But we can make it whatever we want. We can remember this is just a scaffold. So if somebody has said this is the most common way of creating our application, let's give it to users. Let's give them everything they need here let's give them the kitchen sink, everything, right? And this is what they have here. So a couple of things. We have React DOM. We also include our like I said, an index.css. We make our root, and then we use this React render or root render. Look at this render method, and we pass in a couple of new elements. Remember we talked about elements? Here's the new elements. React strict mode, right? And we also pass in the new element that we created called app. App is actually just our own custom element. Wait. Where did that happen? It happened inside of here, inside of our app.jsx or app.tsx. See, so index is importing or injecting all the content from our app.tsx. That's what's happening here on line 4, right? So anything that's in our app.tsx gets injected here. Okay. And, right? We have our index.css. Okay, let's go back to this. Index.css is this. It's a bit of CSS that's for our, kind of at the last part of our application. Guess what I'm going to do with this one? Delete. I don't need this index.css. That's somebody else's index.css. I want to make my own custom styles. So I'm going to get rid of it. And this index.css is CSS for the entire app. Okay, save. And if I do that, you can see suddenly there's a change to my app. Notice that there's a little bit of a border around it. That's what this index.css does. Now, you don't have to change it like I did. I'm just doing it because I want to show you the impacts. Okay. Next, let's go to the next file up the chain, because in our app.index.tsx, it imports app. This on line 4, it imports my app here, right here. So let's go to my app and see what that does. So now my app looks like this. Again, I'm importing my React, I'm importing my logo, I'm importing my app.css. And then I have my first component. This is what a component looks like. A component creates an element. Okay, I'm making my own custom element, my own main, my own paragraph tag, my own anchor tag. That's what I'm doing here with my app. App is actually my own custom component, right? But it's also creating an element in this case. Okay, elements and components. My component is a function. My element is the output. Think of it that way. Okay, and here I have the following thing that I'm doing. Okay, so I have a return statement. This return statement returns pure JSX. This is the JSX piece. Notice how inside of this area here, we have what looks to be very similar to HTML. But guys, warning, it is not HTML. This is JSX. It looks like HTML for you, but actually it's not. Instead, what it is it's just code that we're going to use to generate our HTML. And all this code does the stuff that's happening over here. Okay, let's back up a little bit. What about if I do not, if I erase everything in my app.css? Because notice here in my app.css, I have some more code in here, okay, for this element. If I go back to this, and if I go to my app.css, you can see that I have a bunch of CSS. That's this. What it does is it says, I want to text align for my entire app. In my logo, I want to start thinking about what it's going to look like, right? And it also uses a media query for this thing to change everything. It says, let's use my app logo. Let's have some animation that allows my app logo to spin infinitely, right? As an example. And notice that I also have my app header, which talks about the color of my background, as well as a bunch of other elements here. At the bottom, we have a keyframes entry, which basically says how much of a rotation I'm going to do. I'm going to app logo spin. This is the keyframes that I've accessed up here, app logo spin. And what it's doing is it's infinitely spinning, my logo here. That's what I'm doing here with my CSS from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. That's why it's spinning like this. So I'm actually physically spinning my logo. Okay. And if I wanted to change this, let's say I change this to 10 seconds, right, and press save, then you're going to see that it's going to move faster, right? And if I move it to 5 seconds and I press save, then it's going to move even faster, right? That's what this does. So this is the CSS that's affecting my logo from spinning. If I get rid of all this, right, then there's no more spinning at all, right? In fact, they'll just do this. So this is my CSS for the app, my app component. That's what this is. So I can have CSS for each component, and I can have CSS for the entire application. Okay, good. And let's go back to my app.tsx for a second. So now, because I'm not using my logo, let's get rid of it. I don't want my logo in there. And you know what? I just want a div tag with hello world. So let's go inside of this and just put a div tag here. Get rid of all this stuff. And I want to put an h1 tag with hello world. And if I press save, then we're going to see something that looks like this. Hello world, right? This is a real start. This is where we're really going to start. The thing that we had before was just our scaffolded app. Here's where we're going to actually add our own stuff, right? And our app itself, this app component is some place we're going to start. Here's what I want to do, right? I want to inject our code inside of our app. I'm going to use my app component as the entry point for my whole application. That's what's going to be here, okay? And what I want to do is I also want to use Bootstrap and Font Awesome in my app. Okay, so I want to think about doing that as well. So the way I can do this Bootstrap and Font Awesome stuff is, well, I want to start thinking about, can I import Bootstrap and Font Awesome from the very beginning? And I'm going to use yarn install for that. So the first thing I'm going to do is hello world. Let's just change this and add a container. Remember, I can't use the word class anymore. Class will no be, if I say class container, remember this, it's not going to work because class has an underline. We can't use class. We need to use class name. I know I'm repeating myself, but I want you guys to get it. I want you guys to see this, right? So if I do class name, if I did this and press save, again, there's nothing changed because we don't have Bootstrap installed here on my application. I want to install Bootstrap. How do I do that, right? So let's save and let's go back out here and I'm just going to clear the screen and I'm going to say something like we've done before. I'm going to say yarn add Bootstrap, right? Yarn add Bootstrap. I'm just going to add Bootstrap. Okay, it's going to do its thing. You can see what it's doing too. It's also adding other things. And I'm okay with that. And when you add something for the first time, what it does is it's actually refetching all the packages for you. That's what yarn is doing. And what it's also doing for the first time is it's rebuilding its lock file, right? So let it rebuild its lock file for you. And when we're done, it says that Bootstrap requires popper.js.core. We're going to put that into in a second. So far, so good. It relaunched. Notice that it reset this. No changes so far. No changes. It's still going through its changes, but notice how the server is reacting. Something's going on with the server because it's actually installing new stuff in here. So give it a chance to do it. Now, it looks like it's a long process, but again, you can see that there's a lot of little things that are happening. And one thing it's doing in the background is it's using something called Webpack. Webpack is a file bundler, right? And for the first time when you do this, you're going to see that it's just importing everything that it needs for our application to run. So let it do its business. Don't fret. Don't get mad, right? As it's doing this thing. It's only one time. It's a one-time cost, guys, as we're doing this. And for yours, your system might be faster than mine because at the end of the day, you know, you got to remember what I'm doing. I'm actually running live. I'm on a little laptop and blah, blah, blah. If you're running at home, you'll be running much faster than this. You think? I hope. How about that? All right, almost done, and we're good. We've added that, and we know we need to use popper.js like we saw before. If I scroll up here, it says that popper.js is a dependency. It tells us this right here at popper.js/core. Let's add that in next. So we're going to say yarn add at popper.js/core. We'll add that in. Okay, you can see that's not as bad anymore because we already did all the other work. Shouldn't be that rebuild. We shouldn't have to rebuild everything again. Okay, yeah, it's pretty slow. Kyle, it's an older system for sure. And we also want to say yarn add jQuery because we're going to use jQuery in our code, just like we've done before. So you can add that in, right? And I also want to use font awesome. And if you don't remember the link for that, right? So if I said yarn add font awesome free, you can see we can get a link for that, which is at Fort Awesome / font awesome free. That's what we want to do. That's the yarn package. So we're going to put that in there. We can say yarn add at Fort Awesome / font awesome / free. And we also want to add some, those are our basics. Right now, again, no changes here yet. No changes here yet. And what I want to do, if we go to here, right, just to go to my application, is in my package.json now. I'm just going to just shift there for a second just to take a look at that. I'm just going to maximize the screen so we can see it a little better now. We added in jQuery Bootstrap at 5.2. We also added in Font Awesome, which is this one, right? So we got all that in there. We'd be nice to know if we can add in support for jQuery and Bootstrap like we did before. So again, for that, we need to use @types jQuery. Let's do that. So we're going to say, so yarn add @types / jQuery, and then we're not going to put --dev because it's going to go into one place for React. Okay, let us just do its thing. Okay. Okay. And we also want to add support for Bootstrap. So we're going to say yarn add @types / bootstrap. Right. So we're going to have Bootstrap types in there too, just in case we want to do any kind of Bootstrap code. There we go. So far, so good. Now, again, no changes. If I actually go here, you can see that there's no changes to this because we haven't imported anything yet, right? So inside of my app.tsx, what I want to do is I want to start restructuring. And I want you to think about how this is going to take place, what I want to do, right? I want to think about when I'm, sorry about that, when I'm restructuring, right? What this thing is going to look like, okay? So that's what I want you to do. I want you to think about when I'm restructuring, what is it going to look like? One sec. So, and there's a method to my madness. There's a method that I want you to, to see in a second. I'm just checking my notes just to make sure I'm not crazy, because I don't want to give you the wrong information. Yeah, I was right. So we're going to import Bootstrap here from the top. So we're going to say this is the Bootstrap import thing. So here we're going to say our styles, right? And fonts are going to be in this section. So I want to take this import app.css. That's our CSS for our entire app kind of component. And just before that, I want to start importing my Bootstrap. So I'm going to say import, and I'm going to use Bootstrap just like that. Bootstrap /dist /css / and it's going to be bootstrap.min.css. Bootstrap .min, or sorry, yeah, .min.css. Okay, so that is my import statement. And I'm also going to import, I'm just going to make this larger so you can see it here. I'm also going to import my font awesome. So again, it's going to be import, and then it's at Fort Awesome free, right? And it's going to be css/all.min.css. Okay. So those are the two lines that we can add in. And notice that they just get added in here. And when I save it, and if I go back to my page, right, then what I'm hoping to see is that this is going to change, right? This part over here is going to change. But notice that it didn't, right? It didn't change for a second until I refreshed for the first time. I've done a lot of things here, and notice now that it's changed. See how the text has changed? If you see the text change like this, I just had to refresh one time because I've made so many changes to my server. That's the only time I'm going to have to refresh like this, right? You can see that this is Helvetica and UI, right? Equivalent, which is the default font for Bootstrap, right? And it's different than what we had before. Okay, do you see the change? Why? Because we're saying that H1, the hello world, is in a container, right? That's what we put in there, right? So we know now that Bootstrap is working. This is a great place to put this up on GitHub because we've actually added Bootstrap, we've cleaned up our application, and we're ready to go. Okay. So let's do that. So we're going to go to clear. We go git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added Bootstrap and font awesome. I am? Oh, this one. It's okay. It matters, but don't worry. So, and then git push. We'll fix it in a second. We'll do another push and it'll be fixed. Reality is you can get away with no semicolons in all of JavaScript and TypeScript. You don't need semicolons. We use semicolons because we like semicolons. All right. That's why we use them, not because we need them. JavaScript can run with no semicolons. Okay. All right. So now that we've pushed everything up to GitHub, this is our first little bit of code. Okay, this is the first little bit of code. And notice what we did. We've made an app. The app itself is a component, and it returns a brand new element inside of my index.tsx called app. It looks like an element, like we would put it in HTML, right? So we want to do that for a bunch of stuff that we have. Here's what I want to do. I want to inject my header in my app all the time, right? I always want to have my header. And we have an example of our header, right? Remember in our code here, we have week 5. And in week 5, in our views, we have our components called header, right? Remember this header component? I want this header component in my React. Now, guys, this is part of your in-class exercise 5. And I'm starting the journey to convert right now your portfolio site to a React app. Okay, this is the first part. I want to convert this file right here, this header.html, to a React component. Okay, first thing is let's restructure our application so that it looks like this. It looks like views components. Let's do that. Okay, so again, inside of my SRC folder, you can make whatever folders you want. I'm going to make a brand new folder called views. Here's my views folder. And inside my views folder, I'm going to make a brand new folder called components. Now this is almost like my my common elements, my common components, if you will. I'm also going to put another folder in my views folder called content. Guys, these two components and content in my views folder is the required structure that you need for your assignment 2. I'm telling you what to put in here. This is how we start off. So like a components folder and a content folder. In my components folder, inside here, I want a brand new file called header.tsx. This is our first custom component that you and I are going to make together. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Now, I want to show you something before we start. Let's go to, let's go to this. We can see our app here, right? Kind of side by side. I want to do side by side here so we can see both things. So I want to make a brand new component, and it's going to be called header.tsx. I'm going to go to new file, and I'm going to call it header.tsx. Now watch what happens when I make it, guys. Watch what happens. What did it do? It killed my app, is what it did. As soon as I made a brand new component, it says error source views components header.tsx cannot be compiled. Why? Remember, we're running this live. And when we did yarn start, it has a live server that's running. And what it's trying to do is compile everything in real time for us. It can't compile an empty file, so it fails. Here's what we need to do. We need to use the same structure that we have here in our app.tsx. I'm going to take this first line, which is import React from React, copy it. I'm going to go back to my header.tsx file and paste it in. That's the first line I want you to put in your components. Okay, this basically says, hey, React, I want my entire, your library, most of your library components right here. I want them here. I want all of your library right here, okay? Or most of it anyway. Next, I'm going to create a new function. And I'm going to call, we're going to use functional programming to make a new function called header with a capital H, our own element. Okay. The header function, right, is just going to be exported. And at the bottom, we're going to use TypeScript to export it. We're going to say export default header and press save. Now everything is back to normal. So why can this compile? Well, this compiles because we actually have something to convert. Before we had nothing, it was an empty file, and it doesn't like empty files. We want to make something that we can convert, and we made a brand new component called header. Now, here's the fun part. I want to translate everything we did from before. So I have my header here in React. Let's do it. So this is the first part of your in-class exercise 5. So I'm going to go back to here. Here's my header.html. I can open this with code too. Let's open it up with code. And what it's going to do is going to give me another little file here, right? But it's looking at it actually in the other application. Take a look. My path is COMP2112 week 5 views components header.html. I want this entire file, all this code, I want to put it inside of my header.tsx. So I want to Control A, select everything, copy it. I'm going to go back to my header.tsx and I want to return something. Okay. So remember, the way that apps are created, right, is that we can return anything we want from them. And usually what we return is JSX. Okay, that's what we return. So the structure is I want to return, and inside my return statement in here, here's my return statement. My return statement is going to have these little brackets here. And I'm just going to Control V inside of that return statement. And I want to make a semicolon. Now, Elena, look at my problem. Class name, right? Remember I said this? This is the thing that I talked about in my code, right? We need to change all of this. So instead of class, in here it says class name. We'll do a simple Control F, or replace all. So we can say edit, replace, which is Control H, right? And we can find the word class. I can replace with class name, right? And if I replace all, that's 22 replacements. And then a lot of those errors go away. But we have a bunch of warnings. And the warnings, I'm just going to maximize this for a second. The warnings come from some stuff that isn't working properly. If I hover over, it says, the href attribute requires a valid value to be accessible. Provide a valid navigable address as the href value. Right now, there is no navigable address. We had nothing in there, right? And the same thing with all of this, right? So that's why it doesn't like it. It's giving us a warning, okay? Now, again, it's just a warning. We're going to replace this with our own addresses. And what we're going to do is, I want you to think about where it's going to go. This is going to go to /home. That's the address. We don't have this address yet, but that's where we want to go. We want to say that when I go home, I want this to be /home. And I want this to be I think this is the about, /about. And this one is /projects. And this one should be /services. And this one should be /contact. There we go. And now no more warnings. And that is my navigation bar, right? And let's make it pretty. So I'm just going to put this inside of the render function. And remember that there are prettifiers that you can use here. So if I kind of select all of this, and if I right click and I say something like format selection, then it can format the selection to use prettier or whatever other formatter you want to use to make your document look nice. Okay. If you don't like this, and I don't, then you can simply just space everything in the way you like on your own. Right? And so it's kind of aligned properly. That's all I did. Now, one thing to note, you cannot put this little bracket down here. This bracket must be this. It's actually a return statement with an open parentheses. It's like I'm returning all of this, and this is all my JSX. It looks like HTML, but it's not HTML. This is JSX. Why? Because it's a fragment. All this is an HTML fragment that I'm creating, and I want to inject this fragment. And this fragment is my new element that's called header. Now I can call this whatever I want. I can call this main nav if I want, right? And that'll be the name of my object. But for now, let's call it header. How do I use my header element, this new header element that I've just created, right? So the component is all this. This entire file is the component. It includes the function header and what it returns. Okay, that's the component. The element is the custom element that I'm making from my component. Think about the component as a factory, and it's making the element that I want. Remember, it's declarative. We don't know what's happening under the engine. You know, in the engine itself, we just know that it's going to give us what we want, which is a header. Okay, and all we did was we copied what we had before in here. We haven't done anything else so far. Now, how do I use it? I'm going to go back to my app.tsx, and what I want to do. Yes, you're right, Kyle. You're awesome. Thank you for that. And what I want to do is I want to add in some, we'll call these the common components. I want to add this common component in. And the way I do this, I'm going to say import. And I want to import what? So how do I add in the common component? How do I do that? You know, as an example. So the way to do it is I want to find my common component. So if I start searching for what it says, for example, header, right? Is that where it is? It's actually inside of, I have to give it a path, right? And I also got to give it a name. So I want to say something like import header. And notice when I start typing header, because React is super smart, it also gives me the exact location. If I click on this little link here, boom, it gives me my exact location for where I install it, right? So I'm importing a new header component, right? And it gives me a little underline here saying, hey, you declared it, but you never read it. And it's inside of my views components header. That's where it is. Okay, that's where I got it from. Okay. And now what I want to do is inside of my app, right? Inside of my div tag in here, right? I want you to think about my app as almost like my main content area, right? Or my content area. My app is my entire application. So imagine if I want my header, right? Then I would just put in header. And if I did this, okay, I haven't saved yet. I want to show you what it looks like. Okay, I want to save this. And if you look here at the actual, oops, clicking too many things, guys. No, I don't want Firefox. I clicked too many things on my little thing. Here's my hello world, right? And let's go back to this, right? There we go. So now you can see that if I save this, it's not saved yet, but if I save, right? Then if I did everything right, bam, there's my header. It's exactly how you would normally see it, exactly the same way. And now there's some things that aren't working, right? Like for example, if I click this, it's not working. And it's not working because we don't have Popper.js working right now. We don't have the other parts that we need to get installed. That is another thing that we need to do. So styles and fonts get installed here, okay? But how do I install JavaScript libraries? How do I do that? Is it as simple as that? Like for example, maybe if I had, is it simple like if I want to install JavaScript libraries, do I do that here too? How does that work? So can I do the same way? Can I do it the same way here? Is that possible? Right? Well, that would mean I would import and I would say something like jQuery, right? And I want to do from jQuery, I want jQuery.dist jQuery.min.js. That's what I want, right? So does that do it? Does that like allow me to install or import, you know, something like we did before? Is that possible, right? And notice it says here that could not find declaration file jQuery min.js. If it doesn't find it, it won't crap out. It'll just not work. And we can always look for it. I can go through my node modules. And if I go to jQuery, so just to find that. So here is, I'm just showing you how to correct it if you want to, right? So where am I looking here? It's the same. I think I'm looking in React, which is not I don't want to do that. But if you look here, all your modules are right in here. This is where Bootstrap was put in, right? And all that stuff. All the modules for everything that you've installed is right in here, right? There's Bootstrap, right? So jQuery is the same thing, right? jQuery is going to be in here too. And you can always, you know, look through your node modules to find everything you want. So there's jQuery. So I went to jQuery dist, and then I said jQuery.min.js. That's what I added in, right? So here is jQuery, right? And then I did the same thing, right? I said like I want to add in jQuery dist jQuery.min.js, but it gave me a bit of an error. It said that could not find declaration file for the module. Okay, and it says type in npm install --save -dev add types jQuery, but I did that already, right? So that's what I've done. I've installed jQuery, but it doesn't know what that is. But what about if I install something else? If I did the same thing, if we can assume that this is the way it works, and if I do something like @popperjs.core, right? And if I want to do dist, and then I want to do, you have to use UMD, and in UMD, I want Popper.js to work. Again, if you want to know where everything is, you don't know, and I don't remember. Here, I'm just going to go to @Popper.js here, @Popper.js dist UMD, and it's going to be something like popperjs.min.js. Yep, popper.min.js. So I'm going to put that in there. So popper.min.js. And it'd be nice if I did this and save, it'd be nice if, let's just refresh, that I can do this and press the button and make it go, but it doesn't quite work this way, okay? So it works great for Bootstrap, and it works great for Font Awesome, for CSS libraries, but we need to do something else to make JavaScript libraries work, okay? Just letting you know. Where do you think, if you were going to do it, where do you think that these libraries would be put in? If you can't do it here inside of my app.tsx, I mean, we can certainly include them, right, if we want to. But the problem with this is that if you look here, what it says, it's give me an error. It says that I can't find it. I can't find it. I can't do this. I can't do this. So this would be nice to put in here, but it doesn't quite work. And we're going to fix this next day. We're going to run out of time in a second. One thing to look, places to start looking when it comes to how to fix these things. And if you're a developer, which you all are, right, you'd look through your code and say, where would I put that? Somewhere central where I'd want this thing to be. Like maybe in the manifest file. In the manifest file, it says, well, look, here's my icons, here's my name, right? So my short name is React App. This should not be React App. It should be something like, you know, COMP2112. That should be the name of the app, right? So COMP2112. And the name is not create React App sample. It should be something like COMP2112 example, COMP2112 demo app, right? With React. That's would be the name of the thing, okay? And then you can see it has icons and a start URL and all this other stuff. What else could it have? Control space a lot of times gives us some suggestions about what you can have, undo, what you can have here inside of your application. So, you know, maybe there's some kind of schema we can use or some kind of manifest where we can install our stuff. The other brute force way to do it would be in our index.html, right? We know that this index.html is where all this stuff comes from, right? So it'd be nice if somehow it was put in here. We can remember, we can put it inside the body or inside the head of our document, right? You can see that there's other stuff that's in here. So, I mean, it could be that we want to put stuff in here. One thing it does, though, it tells us that manifest.json provides metadata used when your web app is installed on the user's mobile device, blah, blah, blah. And it also talks about the manifest and how it works, okay? So maybe it's somewhere in here we have to put it, or some other file that we have to use that's central, a common file that we have to use to inject our jQuery, okay? We'll come back to this in a bit. One thing at a time, in other words. Save. So we've injected our header for the first time, and like we said, if we look to the right, we can see now our header. If we make it larger, then it looks just like this, but it doesn't do anything because none of these links exist. Okay, but it also doesn't error out. It doesn't give us a problem. It doesn't say, man, I don't know what you want. It doesn't do that. Let's put this up on GitHub. This is our first thing we added in, our first component, which is our header component. Let's do that. So git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added header component. Nice. There's our header component. We added it in. Let's add our footer component now, right? And it's the same process. Let's do the same process for our footer. So again, I'm going to go into views, components, and inside of my component view, I'm going to put in a new file. We're going to call this footer.tsx. Footer.tsx needs to import React from React. It needs that statement, just like we did here in our header, right? No difference. And inside here, we want a new function. Our function is going to be called footer. But our function is also the component that's going to create a new element, right? And we want to export default my footer object. If I did this, I've got a brand new component structure. This is our scaffold for every component. Every time I make a new component, it's going to be exactly this, starting off, right? Make sense? It's that easy. Remember, declarative. We don't care about the underpinning things that are going on. It's going to do it for us. And now let's go back to our code and see what we can get. Can we get something like our header? Can we open that up and put it inside here? Well, we know we need a return. We know we need this. And right in here in this return statement, that's where we're going to inject or paste our footer. Back to our thing, we have our footer. We're going to open this up. And inside of our footer, we only have a little bit of a footer, like this much, right? Copy it. Go back to our footer.tsx and paste it in. And remember, we have to do our control H. We need to change our class, the class name, replace all. And for now, that's a pretty good start, right? We're just changing this up. We're just going to reorganize how this got copied in a little bit and save. And that's our footer. Yay, it's so exciting. How do I put this in? It's the exact same way we put it in before. So we're going to go back to our app.tsx. We're going to import the footer, right? And we're going to go down here and we're going to put the footer underneath my H1 tag. Save. That's it. And our footer's in place. It's a beautiful thing, my friends, because take a look. There's my footer. Right? There's my header and there's my footer. For you, it's going to be the same process. When you build up your portfolio site, you're going to have your header and you're going to have your footer. Your header is going to be your navigation potentially, and your footer, you might have a footer, or you might have other elements. Any other elements you want in your pages that are common to all pages go here in your app.tsx. If it's a common element that you have in every page, it's here. Okay. Next. So that's excellent. We added our footer. Let's put this up on GitHub. Can't type. Right? Hey. Last thing. Let's make our first content component. Our first content component. By the way, it's all of regular components. This is the exact same method. Okay, now, Elena, you're going to help me out. You're going to help me make the component, okay? From scratch. I know it's you. I'm picking somebody, all right? So in my content component, I'm going to make a brand new file. I'm going to call it home.tsx. Home.tsx. Okay, what's the first thing I need at the top of my component? Tell me. Help me out. Let's do it together. I showed you a couple times. Do you remember? Yes. Import React from React. First part. Next. Help me out. Next part. Function. What we're going to call the function? Home. You got it. And I need to return, but let's not do the return yet. What we need to do first is export defaults. Yep. Yeah. What do you mean? Yes. Yeah. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes. No, I'm just doing it this way because I want to show you that I want to split it up for you, because sometimes we might have other things we want to export from there too. I can have multiple components or multiple little pieces that I have inside my file. Remember, all I'm doing here is I'm splitting my application across different files. I can put everything in one big file if I want with React, right? But I'm splitting it up. I have files everywhere. Why would I want to do that? Because it's more maintainable. It's smaller. I can look at just one little piece, not my entire thousands of lines of application, right? That's why I'm doing it this way. But to your point, you could put export default functions equal to blah, blah, whatever it is, right? And you can actually put export defaults and then the name of the, instead of the function, just function. No name at all if you really want to, okay? But home is the name of the function. This is a nice way of doing it. And what we want to do again is we have a return in there, but let's get our content first. So we want to get our content. I'm just going to kill these things right here. And this one. And I'm just going to open up our content for the home. So views, content. This is, again, imagine if this was your portfolio site. I'm going to go to my home page, and I'm just going to grab my content from here, open with code, and it's nothing really, right? It's just this. That's all we had in our last content. I'm going to grab all this piece, copy it. And now to complete our component, just like you said, I'm going to put a return, open bracket, with a semicolon at the end, and teleport our component in there. Hey, look at that. And fix up our problems. Now there's two problems here this time, okay? So this one, right? And then there's this one. And it says that HR has no corresponding close tag. So it's so good that it also gives us information about how to structure stuff. Remember, our old code didn't give us any code hinting on HTML. It only gave us code hinting on JavaScript and CSS. Now, TSX gives us code hinting even on your HTML. If it's something that's not formatted properly, then it'll fix it for you. Save. Okay, there's my home component. And if I want to use my home component for the first time, right? And I want to use this component in my code, let's just restructure it so it looks nice. And oop, there. Rip. Wow. Wow, okay. That was weird. Okay, there we go. I want to restructure this thing for the first time. Then if I go back to my app.tsx, this one, here's my app.tsx. Well, now I'm injecting my home. That doesn't make any sense. So what do I do? How do I inject it so I can, kind of navigate? How do I navigate from one part of my app to the other? How do I do that? So this is where, and this is the last thing we're going to do today. I want to talk about, surely I can inject it here. I can just put home and it'll show my home. We've seen that before. That's not going to be a surprise for you. But what about if I have multiple pages? How do I do that? How do I fix that up? And this is where you're going to have a little bit of work to do for yourself for in-class exercise 5. I got to give you some work to do. Right? It can't be just all me. What I want to do now is I want to use a new component that we don't have. Okay. And the new component is going to be called React Router DOM. I don't have this component. I need to add it in. Right. And I mean, like, I don't have it at all, not even in my whole application. And so I'm just going to close everything off for now. And what I want to do here, and this is before I've added my component, it's there. Look, here's my content. It's there. It's just no problem. Okay. But what I need to do is I want to add a new component in my package.json. I want to add React Router DOM. Let's do it together. Okay. So I'm just going to go down to the bottom. React render. I could do that, but I'm going to do a different way, Kyle. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to say, let's clear this. I'm going to say yarn add React Router DOM. Let's put that in there, please. And the reason why I want this is it's going to give me client-side routing. It's going to start the process that I'm looking for here for your application, right? So React Router DOM is what I want in here, okay? And just like we did before, what I also want is, I also want the type definition library for this. So now that I've got React Router DOM, I'm going to do yarn add at types React Router DOM. I need both. And remember, at types gives me the type definition library for my TypeScript, so I can get good code hinting for my React Router DOM. Once I have React Router DOM, then I can start using it in my code, right? And React Router DOM is interesting because it has a bunch of different functions or classes that it includes for us to use, okay, which is pretty awesome. And so we're going to start with a couple of things that we want to use. One of them is called the browser router. And there's another thing called routes, and there's another thing called route. Let's get into that. And then we'll stop here. And once I've started, then I'll let you do your thing, okay? So here's my header, right? But I want to do an import way up the top here, where it says React. I want to put a brand new import statement called, and I want to use a different format for this. I want to use browser router. Here it is, browser router. Notice how once I start typing it, it finds it out. I want to use browser router, route, and routes from React Router DOM. So browser router is the ability for me to have a client-side routing kind of mechanism that I talked about in your assignment 2. And what I want to do is I want to put the browser router right in here. So this is where I added for the first time. I'm going to put in something called browser router. So browser, and it's one word, router, browser router. But I want to surround my app with my browser router. So I'm going to take this browser router and I'm going to put this closing statement right here. So now, guess what? My application, which is in my header and my footer, right, is inside of a browser router. I want to get rid of this right now, the hello world. Let's not do hello world anymore, okay? And I'm going to restructure my app to have a bunch of routes. So here's how it works. I want to have routes, and inside my routes, I want to define a bunch of routes that I want my app to use. This is how beautiful this is, okay? And what I can do is I can say, I want a route, and my route is going to be structured the following way, okay? Just looking at my notes here. I can define the path for my route. I can say my route path is equal to the main route, remember that default route. And I can define an element that is going to be used when I go to this route. I can say my element that I want to use is going to be called the home element. This is how you have to structure it, guys. Actually, it's not quotations, it's just curly braces. It's going to be my home element. And I'm going to just type in home. Okay, like so. Notice that it gives me an underline. Why? I never imported home yet, right? And what I can do is if I click on this for the first time, right, it tells me that I can do a quick fix and add import home automatically for me. Now it puts it right here, and I don't want it right there, right? I want this to be somewhere more organized, like up here. So I'm going to make kind of like content components here. And I want to just grab this thing right here, cut it, and put it in here, just to make it so that's more organized. So I want all my content components to be here. Now, I've defined my path for my home, but I can also have another path for my home, which is going to be called home. I'm just going to copy paste this route. And I'm going to say slash home is also home, right? This and this. Remember, we did this before in our own little router, right? Right. So save. And then what I can do is in my router, right, I eventually can go to home. So let me show you how that looks. If and I can't complete it for you, but I want you to do all the other routes. Here's what I want you to do for your homework, right? Put in services, contact, all the other pages that we did from week 5, right? My contact page, all the routes for everything. I don't want anything actually linked to your header file because you're running out of time. But here's what you can do now with your app. So look how it went to welcome to our site by default. Take a look at that, right? It went there because if I went to home like this, if I say something like slash, it goes home, right? And if I go to slash home, that also works because I have routing now. It does welcome to my site. However, these buttons don't really do anything, right? I mean, sure, it does this, but it doesn't really do what I want to do. We're going to add our routing later. So your job, your task for in-class exercise 5 is make all the rest of the links, which means make 4 more components, right? Services, projects, contacts, and about. Make all those components. And then inside of your app, make all the routes here. It's that simple for your 4%. Okay. Yeah. That's it. Okay. Nice and simple. I want you to organize it. And when we get back next time, we'll do the next piece. That's it for me, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. I'm going to put this up on GitHub. Thanks, Kyle. Take care. All right, guys, I'm going to stop recording.